Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here with the WWE versus WCW Monday Night War documentary series for tonight. It was on Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was entitled The Austin Era Has Begun. And they talk about one of the biggest superstars of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And honestly, in my mind, I listened to the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast. Over the history of time, they've honestly put out at least, counting like VHS and DVDs, they've probably put out at least a dozen tapes or DVDs on Stone Cold Steve Austin where they've told his story. And honestly, going into this one, especially from listening to his podcasts and Q&As and people asking and him answering the same questions almost over and over, or every time he's telling a story with a guest, he always seems to tell his story to the guest, even though he's told it to the viewer time and time again. It's still one of my favorite podcasts that is out there. But Stone Cold Steve Austin's story has been told time and time again. And out of all the episodes, this was honestly one that I was sort of not looking forward to. But I wanted to sit down and watch it because there was nothing else to watch tonight after Monday Night Raw. And it just helped me out by watching it tonight instead of waiting it for tomorrow. And plus, I knew, I didn't want to be, if it ended up being great, I didn't want to be the one guy on Twitter tomorrow not knowing exactly what went down. We'll breeze through the stuff that they've talked about 1,000 times, and that's basically, Stone Cold Steve Austin, was in WCW as Stunning Steve Austin, and he was the 1990 Rookie of the Year, and he made his way to WCW very fast, and when he was there, Dusty Rhodes promised him the world, telling him that he was going to be working a program with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and he was going to be going after the television championship, and then he shows up to work one day, and he finds out that he's going to be teaming up as a member of the Hollywood Blondes, with Brian Pillman. They had a very successful run. They honestly were not supposed to, be over at all, and it just seems to be that they went the extra mile by, changing their boots and changing their tights and matching things up. That the fans really got behind them. There was people that loved them, there was people that hated them, but, they were really over as a wrestling tag team to the point of where WCW was like, oh shit, what are we going to do? We weren't supposed to get these guys over. They were just supposed to be there, and, that was supposed to be it. But, Pillman and Austin both had this drive that was inside of them, that they always wanted to do everything to the best because they wanted to be the best. From there, WCW broke them up, even though Pillman and Austin both were saying that they didn't want to be separated. They were really over, and they really felt like they had something, and they could have been one of the, the greatest wrestling tag teams of all time. From the breakup, Stone Cold Steve Austin, I keep on calling him that, even though he's Stunning Steve Austin. I think you guys will understand. But Austin would join up with Colonel Robert Parker, and with there he would be featured in matches. But then he had a drastic change of his personality. Once basically Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair came into play, he saw the writing on the wall that no matter how hard he tried, he was never going to reach the top of WCW. And this is the part of the story that I don't think's ever been really told on the Austin documentary or any other sort of VHS or DVD releases that they've ever put out. It's that basically Austin sort of shut down. I mean, he's told the story about he was hurt. I believe he said he tore his rotator cuff and he had to get that worked on. And WCW called him up and they were trying to get him on the phone. And they heard him in the background yell to his wife, "Tell him I ain't here." And so they said, well, I guess he doesn't really want to, be a part of us. He doesn't even want to talk to us on the phone. So Eric Bischoff, went and he released him due to basically they owed him an amount of money that was not worth what they were paying him because he had been hurt and he'd been gone too long. Kind of a chicken shit move, but Stone Cold Steve Austin has even came out and said, if it was him and he was in the same place, he would have done what Eric done and he would have released him also. From there, he went and he sat at home and basically was waiting for the phone to ring. And his old manager, Paulie Dangerously, called him up and invited him to ECW. From there, Paulie Dangerously would have him shoot promos because he wasn't able to work. and basically, he spent some time at ECW, but not a whole bunch of time. Paulie said that one of his tips that he used to do to make Austin be at the top of his game when he did his promos was that, Austin has told the stories. He went to the place they would shoot all the promos, and since they were buddies. He thought Heyman would have him, shoot one of the first promos. He would go home and he would have a good night. But instead, Heyman shot everybody else's promos. He made Austin wait in the back of the line like he was a nobody. So then when he finally sat in front of the camera to do these promos, he would be pissed off at the fact that Heyman made him wait so long, and it would bring out this hatred for WCW, and he would give these promos on Hulk Hogan and on Eric Bischoff, and you could tell from his eyes that he was just a man that was ready to kill. From there, finally in 1995, Vince McMahon gave him a call, and because, he was having trouble paying his bills on the ECW paycheck, only working 1 day a week shooting these promos, he took a job in WWF, even though he knew the job wasn't going to be a very good job. He was going to come in and he was going to join the $1 Million Corporation, be managed by Ted DiBiase, and be the ringmaster. He would become the $1 Million champion that Ted DiBiase appointed, and the ringmaster name, of course, was because he could work his way around the ring. As Vince McMahon said, he was going to be the new Bret Hart, only he was going to be a heel, so he would be able to make baby faces look good in the ring. From there, they didn't mention it, but it's always fun to talk about Savio Vega. He doesn't get mentioned a lot. Stone Cold Steve Austin came in and he worked a big, long series of matches with Savio Vega. These matches, Stone Cold Steve Austin has really said, got him back into ring shape, after being out so long and only doing promos in ECW. Of course, everything, caught fire when Ted DiBiase left WWF at the time to go to WCW as a part of the Monday Night War to go be a manager of the NWO, and that left Stone Cold Steve Austin, the ringmaster, without the management of Ted DiBiase behind him. From there, basically, Austin went to Vince and told Vince, I'm not feeling this. This isn't what I want to be. So Vince said, go home and figure out what you want to be. From there, he was watching a series, a documentary series on killers, on, I guess, serial killers. And he found one guy that he wanted to patent his life after, or not his life, he didn't want to go out killing people, but patent his style in the ring, where basically he became Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, from there, they just sort of dropped the ringmaster and started rolling with this. Everything took off for him, of course, when he won the King of the Ring in 1990. I think that would be 1995, when he would beat Jake the Snake Roberts. And I didn't know that he used the stunner for the first time on Jake at that point. And of course, everybody thought that right then is when basically Stone Cold Steve Austin, said the words, and that's Austin 316, I just whooped your ass, and then it was just wildfire from there, and Austin became one of the biggest stars. He still had to crawl and scratch and basically try to just get anything on the card after that. Of course, from there he would go into SummerSlam. At SummerSlam is when he would break his neck in a move that was messed up by Owen Hart. It was a bad pile driver in the ring, where he got his head buried into the canvas. And because of the stipulation of the Intercontinental Championship being on the line, as well being a kiss your ass match, Austin couldn't lose the match. So he basically, through the smarts of Owen Hart, he bought some time to where, he basically backed into Austin, and Austin, was able to get, one little arm up to get one of the worst roll-ups of all time. For the 1, 2, 3, they were still able to get up and get going from there. After winning the King of the Ring, and then being injured at SummerSlam, they were able to go and, sort of just shoot promos, week after week after week, never seeing Austin getting physical, but just getting to the point where you wanted to see him physical. And from there, he would get himself better to the point where he would become champion at WrestleMania. There was a big peak in his career, because at WrestleMania 14, he beat Shawn Michaels, but the year before is when it really started to begin to really climb for him. He'd won the King of the Ring, but it was the WrestleMania 13 match, him against Bret Hart with Ken Shamrock as a special guest referee. With Shamrock being the ref, he had to stop the match because basically Bret had put Steve Austin in the sharpshooter, but there was no way that Steve Austin was going to submit to give Bret Hart that benefit of the doubt of not only beating him but making him quit in the ring. He basically passed out from the pain of the move and blood loss from being cut open on the top of his head, and just blood poured all over him. And there's just a point in the match when you turned on Bret and you started cheering for Austin because you didn't want him to submit to that move. It was just this brilliant double turn that WWE was able to pull off that night, with Austin going babyface. So when he became champion by beating Shawn Michaels, of course that was one of the biggest things in the Attitude Era as well, with Mike Tyson coming in and then building up the whole hoopla circus around that, a guy that they almost lost due to WCW almost stealing him away, but Eric Bischoff thinking that the money that they were going to have to pay for Tyson was just going to be, just way too much. Coming out of that, you were able to start one of the biggest feuds of all time, which is bigger than the Hatfields and McCoys, which was, Austin versus McMahon, with basically McMahon trying to think that he wasn't going to be the guy that should be the champion of his company because, he used four-letter words, because he flipped off the crowd and everything like that. He wanted to get a guy that he wanted to get in there. Around this time, they started showing footage of WCW building up Goldberg, and there was always comparisons about, Goldberg being the WCW's version of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and a lot of magazines made a lot of money by putting these dream cards up there with, Goldberg versus Austin coming down to it. And honestly, I wasn't the biggest Goldberg fan, but just by the physical stature of Goldberg, just looking like a huge monstrous beast, I know that Austin could scratch and claw and brawl with anybody. I always thought that if those guys got together, Goldberg was going to get the better of Austin. Honestly, if this match ever took place, it was going to take place in WWF, and there was rumors about Goldberg's contract, ending at one point or getting close to ending, and him almost going to WWF. And I've never really heard anything backed up at the time, but I remember going back to those times when I would read the wrestling dirt sheets. I thought that was damn near true, where Goldberg almost went there one time, but I think it would matter where that match took place. If it took place in WWF, honestly, Austin's going to win. If it took place in WCW, honestly, they're going to have, Goldberg win. But in my mind, if I closed my eyes and had those guys wrestle, I never really saw a way that Stone Cold would be able to be a guy like Goldberg. The most important part of this whole thing was basically them setting up the contingency factor of the WWF at the time, with basically Austin having to have neck surgery in 99 because of the accident in 97. His neck got worse. It was because they had set up, building all of these stars. 1999, without Stone Cold Steve Austin, ended up being one of the biggest years for WWF. Even though they had lost one of their biggest stars, they were able to build and gain more ground off of WCW, not being able to put anything together that was fresh. Still pushing Hulk Hogan, still pushing, the NWO, and not being able to build the guys from the bottom that people really were behind it, people really wanted to see. In 99, you had Triple H, you had The Rock, you had Undertaker still, Undertaker wasn't even featured in that, now that I think about it. Maybe they're trying to save him for his own. But they also had Kurt Angle, who came in as a rookie, and, you could easily see that, that was one of the biggest years that they ever had. And then once he was out for a whole year, he was able to come back in 2000. He had the match with Rikishi because they sort of put that on him. That Rikishi was the guy that hit Austin with the car, and he did it for The Rock. He did it for the people. He sort of was teaming together with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm sorry. He was sort of teaming together with Triple H, who would sort of talked him into doing it. That, set up some tag team matches. They got everybody going. Rikishi never got to the ground of basically being a big monstrous heel. Everybody still wanted to I guess sing and dance with him pretty much is what it was. But Stone Cold Steve Austin is and always will be looked at as one of the biggest stars of wrestling. This was a great way to do it. I think honestly, if I was to sit down, I would want to watch his documentary that came out 2 years ago or so instead of this. But this was an awesome 1 hour thing about him and his career at a little window of about 5 years. So this was awesome. Thank you, WWE Network. Only $9.99. I would have paid $9.99 for this alone, honestly. Peace out. Thank you guys, everybody.